What if your past wasn't just haunting you, but still pulling the strings? On today's episode, I'm joined by Elizabeth Devecchi, author of A Twist of the Lens, a slow-burn psychological thriller that unravels the lingering grip of childhood manipulation, the blurred morality of survival, and the insidious comfort of voices we carry long after they're gone. We talk about grooming that hides behind praise, families that wound, and how a stolen childhood can be reforged into something dangerously functional. If you'd like to support the show, head over to patreon.com/The Dark Mind Podcast and become a member. Subscribers get exclusive daily blog posts, in-depth weekly reviews of books and films, and an original narrative fiction story every week produced and narrated by me, Vincent Midgard. Your support doesn't just help the show, it keeps the dark conversation alive. So without further ado, I give you Elizabeth Devecchi. Elizabeth, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining me on this 5th day of June 2025. I was thrilled when you contacted me about the arc for your new novel, A Twist of the Lens. The title was mysterious, much like the slow burn trail you blazed throughout the novel, leading to its thrilling climax. The callbacks to the protagonist's sordid childhood, where they maintained an air of normalcy but was anything but, added a rich layer of tension to the story, and I truly enjoyed it and appreciate you for once again joining me on the show.
Absolutely.
Well, so let's see, sort of a brief synopsis. The book follows the life of Charlie, who has a checkered past but is now living a relatively normal life, complete with a partner named Becca. One day, Charlie receives a call from Tom, who is Charlie's brother, and finds him to be in dire straits. He needs someone to watch their daughter, Alex, who is having a bit of a teenage moment and refusing to go to camp just as Tom and his wife, Lindsay, are about to leave for a much-needed vacation. Whether the trip is a break from stress or an attempt to reconnect as a couple is unclear, but either way, they're desperate to go. Charlie agrees because Becca is heading off to visit her own family, who doesn't particularly care for Charlie. Charlie says goodbye to Becca, climbs onto an old restored vintage 1952 Indian Roadmaster, and heads to Colorado. And that's where the story truly begins. So you begin the book with a quote by Madeline Miller from The Song of Achilles. Quote, "You can use a spear as a walking stick, but that will not change its nature." Did this quote shape the writing of the book from the beginning, or did it come to you later as a reflection of what the story had become?
Definitely later as a reflection. And I think anyone who reads the book can see kind of how it can be applied both in the sense of with people, as in perhaps with some techniques or tools that they use.
Gotcha. Well, in chapter 1, we are led into the story from Charlie's point of view and introspection. How did you find Charlie's voice, and what guided your decision to introduce it with such a bold, reflective tone right from the start?
Well, I've been wanting to attempt a first person present tense book, which this mostly is. You have some backstory too of Charlie's back life. And Charlie's voice initially came to me as young Charlie, because this was actually meant to be a short story for a crime submission that I saw and decided to I had never written anything crime related before, so I thought I'd give it a try. Sadly, as often happens, I made the short list and was told that they wanted me in the anthology, but they could only choose one novella length, and mine was novella length. So the publisher asked if he could keep the story on hold if they did a second volume of the anthology. But in the meantime, I decided I wanted to make it into a novel. So I kind of had to grow Charlie's voice and imagine how Charlie would be as an adult and, grow the present from the backstory that I had already written.
And how do you go about that? Is that pretty much a pantsing process, or do you really have to get in there and kind of expand the scaffolding, so to speak?
It's hard to kind of say because I think I mostly do it intuitively. When I'm writing a character, I generally have a lot more of their story planned out in my head already than what the reader's actually going to see, because I think that's going to make it more realistic. Like, I know things obviously that the reader doesn't know, but just the fact of me knowing them can be reflected in the story. So I don't really know, but I kind of knew Charlie somehow. So
Gotcha. Well, what role does the contrast between Charlie's relationship with Becca and her family play in shaping Charlie's emotional world early in the book, especially given the fact that Charlie's family welcomes Becca with open arms, while Becca's family does not extend the same warmth to Charlie?
So that for me was built on like a realistic platform. Not to say that my extended family doesn't accept me.
No, that's not what we're saying at all. No.
My husband, so my in-laws are Italian. I'm American. They're Catholic. I'm not. So there was a little bit of getting used to me in the beginning. The Italians, actually, I believe it was my husband's grandmother who said when she first heard that we were getting married, moglie boi da paese tuoi, which in their dialect means you're really supposed to get your cattle and your wife from your hometown. So they weren't exactly thrilled. But I think it's mostly from, we fall in love. And in the beginning, it's infatuation and love and everything. It's only when we start to plan out what we're going to do for our future that we realize we don't really have control over all of the aspects. For example, extended family, whether they like you or not. And I don't really think it affects Charlie all that much because of Charlie's kind of hardened past. But obviously, it's not pleasant either.
Yeah, when Becca's talking about the doctor that her parents want to introduce her to, they just kind of laugh about it. So yeah, it kind of rolls off Charlie's back.
Right.
Well, in chapter 2, we find that Tom needs Charlie not to house sit, but rather to babysit their adolescent daughter who is refusing to go to camp due to a falling out with a friend, and states that if she's forced to go, she will sneak out or get kicked out. So what were you thinking about in terms of how Charlie with a complex past might respond to a strong-willed teenager like Alex?
Right. Well, first of all, we learned that Charlie is not really child-centered, so to speak. Children are scary and you don't know what they're thinking, and they have no filters. So they'll say whatever comes to their mind, and that's scary. So that in mind, though, I think when Charlie hears what's going on, the thought is, hey, I think Tom's out of his league here. I know more about getting in trouble as a kid than anybody does. So maybe I can handle this. And also there's a phrase that one of my favorite in the book is when Tom says something like, I mean, how much trouble can a 12-year-old get into? Which kind of sends Charlie reeling, because Charlie's thinking, what was I doing when I was 12? So
yeah. Mm-hmm. Funny you should mention. Let me tell you about some things.
Exactly.
Well, in chapter 3, while Charlie is talking with Tom about traveling to Colorado to babysit Alex, Charlie's partner, Becca, overhears the plan to take the old restored motorcycle, referred to as the FCC, which remind me what the FCC stands for?
So it's the flying candy cane, because it's a red and white motorcycle and it really can go. So it really flies. So
Gotcha.
that's the nickname Charlie, who's not really a motorcycle person in the beginning, gives to the motorcycle.
Gotcha. Well, Charlie wants to take this motorcycle all the way to Colorado due to the fact that Charlie is just not into flying, which I'm good with flying just as long as it's not over a massive body of water. So
okay. This would be over mountains sometimes. So.
Oh, yeah. Forget about that.
Yeah.
Well, we just won't talk about that. It's a long trip and one that Charlie has never attempted on a motorcycle before. There's a passing reference to the FCC and old cars, but it also feels like a metaphor for freedom, nostalgia, or even risk. What inspired that motif, and how do you see it reflecting Charlie's journey?
So, certain bit of risk, yes, because it is an old motorcycle and Charlie's not an expert. So there is a certain amount of risk. But for me, I think the inspiration for me was thinking of when I got my first 10-speed bike, and then car, and then I a moped when I was living in Italy. It's that sense of freedom and expanding your world. Suddenly you can go from point A to point B to point C, and then further and further out. So it is definitely a reference to a certain sense of freedom and adventure with a little bit of risk.
Yeah, it may be totally different in real life, but at least when I see it in films, you know, those scenes of riding a Vespa in a small European town, that just looks like fun to me. I don't know.
Yes.
Maybe it's not. Is it?
Well, it's fun, but it's fun in the way that playing like Mario Kart or some other video game is, because, and I'm not kidding, people open their car doors, you know, but it's adventure and risk. Definitely. I remember there was one time where I was on it wasn't a Vespa, it was a moped. Not a scooter really. So I was on my moped and I'm moving forward and I was testing the brake thinking, is there something wrong with my brake? And then I realized that the car in back of me wanted to go. And so he was pushing me into the intersection so he could turn right.
Hell?
So exactly. So, and I wheelied over a huge pothole that wasn't marked. I mean, it was definitely an adventure. I am done with those kinds of adventures for now because I am also currently on a blood thinner, which does not mix well with motorcycles. So I will dream about motorcycles, but I will not ride them.
Yeah. Yeah. When I was in London, I was watching how, people on motorcycles cut through traffic and do all that stuff. And I was telling the guy that was driving, I was like, man, people just do not give a damn. He's like, oh no, it's legal. I was like, oh, really? Oh, okay. Sorry. I'll just,
yeah.
Sorry,
though I don't think pushing motorcycles or mopeds out into an intersection is
no, not that. But they are allowed to just weave in and like, good God.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, so circling back to the book, Becca is initially hesitant about Charlie making the long road trip on motorcycle, but she eventually not only accepts it, she also buys Charlie protective riding gear. So was this act meant to be controlling, nurturing, wise, or maybe all of the above?
I don't really think controlling so much. I think it was more Becca was anti-motorcycle, but then in the end kind of like, okay, fine, accepts it, and then gets the protective gear. Because based on Becca's job too, Becca is a caretaker. She's a physical therapist. She helped Charlie's dad come back from a stroke. She's just a nurturing kind of caretaker, problem-solving type person in that way.
Yeah, and I guess a big part of relationships is compromise in some way.
Exactly. Yes. And if you think about it, Charlie scored like some of the latest tech in motorcycle gear. So win-win.
Yeah, I was listening to that description. I was like, good God, does that stuff actually exist?
Yes, it does.
Wow. And yeah, like my stepdad had a Goldwing, so I was used to seeing them driving with those boom mics and
Hmm.
Bluetooth connectivity. But yeah,
Yes.
some of that stuff, I was like, man, that must be like defense level
Oh
stuff.
yeah, no, I researched I ended up going down this huge rabbit hole wanting an Indian Roadmaster motorcycle, but knowing that I shouldn't ride one. But no, there's a lot of stuff out there that I was like, are you kidding me? Now I kind of want to see it. And there is a motorcycle shop nearby that let me explore there. And also Alessia went there, my daughter took pictures of a 1947 Indian Roadmaster that was similar colors and mocked up a poster for me that I can't wait to put out too. So,
Oh, nice. Awesome. Well, let's see. Circling back to the book, Charlie's emotional state in the story is hard to pin down. It seems to be equal parts toughness and vulnerability, holding the true self close to the chest. What were you trying to say about control over one's image, one's path, or one's memory through Charlie's reluctance to be fully known, even by Becca?
so I think Charlie is the past is an embarrassment kind of for Charlie, shoplifting, among other things. And I think that Bill kind of instilled this little voice when he said, what would people think if they knew? And so I think that that's just in there now in Charlie's brain. And so it's kind of a wow, if Becca knows who I really am, she won't love me. So, and through the book, there's character development where, you know, Charlie comes to realize that maybe we need a better foundation.
Yeah, the blackmail. Well, I guess I don't want to reveal a spoiler. Let's just say the blackmail that exists throughout. It's a very an interesting concept that this Mr. Bill. I keep thinking of him as kind of this figure. You only hear him talk, kind of like Bill from Kill Bill.
Right, right, right.
Well, in chapter 6, Charlie makes a last minute phone call to Tom before hitting the road. This chapter captures that in between moment right before a major departure. What's important to you as a writer when portraying these liminal spaces where a character is both looking forward and still tethered to what they're leaving behind?
Yeah, it's the before and the after. So obviously, there's always a before and an after for every single moment in our lives, but some of them are a lot more consequential. So I like to leave, kind of a hint where you're in that ambiguous state. You've got one foot in each world. You have one foot in the before and one foot towards the after. And I think leaving the little hints that it is a consequential moment brings a better payoff to the reader when they find out what those consequences are.
Hmm. And so I feel like it says it in the book, but has it been a while since Charlie's been out there?
Charlie's never been to Colorado
Okay.
and has always had a very kind of small, restricted world. In fact, when I think it was in the past, we see Charlie talking to a school counselor and planning on maybe going out to Colorado where Tom's going to school. But it never happens for reasons that we will not reveal yet.
Yeah. Okay, so I guess the reason I brought it up because when Charlie first sees Alex, when Charlie arrives, Alex looks a lot older. Is that a comparison from pictures or?
I think it's just because, and that was based kind of on my own son, for example. If I look at when we moved to Colorado, which was only a couple years ago, he was probably about yay high to me, and now he's 6'1". So I think Alex is just in that moment where a child changes to a teenager, changes to an adult, like in that in between where changes happen quickly. And Tom and his family do visit their mother fairly often, and their mom lives in the same town.
Oh, so they've come
So
there.
they see each other
Okay.
often enough. It's just that Charlie's never been out to Colorado, to
it.
their home.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think what brought that up for me was my brother and his wife and my nieces moved out to Bernie, which is about 3.5 hours or so away from where I live in Houston. And I went out to visit them a few months ago and hadn't seen the girls in a little bit over a year. And I was like, oh my God, who are you?
Yeah, no, it's that age where they change so
one's
much.
14 and one's 10.
That's, yeah.
I'm like, oh,
yep.
Okay.
Yeah, my son, he's 16 now, but, we moved out here. He was in that kind of range. And just from one moment to the next, I look at the pictures. Obviously, I was with him. But even with me living with the boy 24/7, I remember a moment where he walked up behind me at like a Target or something. We were out shopping. And for a minute, I did one of these, like, who's that guy behind me? And I realized it's my son. So it even shocks me sometimes.
Yeah, I bet. Well, circling back to the book, in Chapter 7, Once on the Road, Charlie stops at a gas station with an attached diner to fuel up both bike and belly. There, Charlie meets the proprietor, a kind older man who shows remarkable patience and tolerance towards a young boy causing trouble in the store. But as the scene unfolds, Charlie discovers that no good deed goes unpunished, leading to a surprisingly cynical outcome. The gas station scene offers more than a pit stop. It gives us a layered glimpse into kindness, misjudgment, and disappointment. What inspired this particular interaction, and what did you want it to reveal about human nature?
So, as you know, I love writing in the morally gray area, but also I love to explore the things aren't what they seem kind of scenes. So in this particular case, there's also the theme of, it takes a village to raise a child, depends on the villager that you happen to run into or your child happens to run into, and things can take a very different turn. This scene recalled in my mind a scene when I was living over in Italy and I was a teenager, and I was on, it's called a tram. It's like a bus/train, almost like a trolley type thing. And I was going to classes or work, I don't remember, but this very distinguished looking gentleman got on with one of those 90s kind of trench coat type raincoats. And he had his briefcase, he had his hand in his pocket. And I was very tired, but I suddenly kind of zoomed in on the fact that his hand was in his pocket, but then it was coming out the jacket, reaching into the purse of the woman next to him. So he was actually and he saw me notice and jumped off at the next stop before I could even really fully understand what was going on. So that scene has always kind of stuck with me. Like, here's this respectable man going to work on the bus when in actuality, he's like probably pickpocketing half of the town on the buses with his little trench coat trick.
Okay, well, thank God that's not the worst thing people do with trench coats. Exactly. I was like, wait, hang on.
No, he was stealing.
Yeah, and I don't want to reveal it, but listeners at home, when you do read the book, remember this reference we're making here. It's really interesting. So in Chapter 9, we are introduced to a pivotal figure in Charlie's life, an older man named Bill, which we've kind of alluded to a little bit so far. Charlie eventually came to see Bill as a grandfather, at least in how their relationship appeared from the outside. He catches Charlie doing something wrong, but instead of chastising Charlie or telling Charlie's mother, he compliments Charlie. This moment turns out to be an early form of grooming, not for sex trafficking, but for something else entirely. How did you approach the challenge of showing grooming behavior that isn't sexual in nature, but still deeply unsettling? What signals were important to include without being too overt?
So I wanted to approach it in a subtle, confusing manner for Charlie, because that's what it is basically. Here's Charlie doing something wrong, and this man is accepting, and not only, but encouraging. So, kids love to be encouraged
Yeah.
and love attention, whether sometimes it's the bad kind, sometimes it's the good kind. But in this case, Bill is very much encouraging a negative behavior. And I think that any child would find that confusing, but also a little bit exhilarating. So I wanted to be subtle and confusing and also leave little hints as to how the relationship was developing, almost like a Stockholm syndrome type thing, where you suddenly, Charlie's thinking, oh, I've got to buy his favorite kind of licorice while I'm at the store. Or, Bill saying, oh, you forgot to give me a little kiss on the cheek like a grandpa. It's very confusing. It's very, I don't know. It's wrong, obviously, but I think that that's the way some of these relationships start. Because if someone immediately walked up to you and said, "Hey, you're going to start stealing from me in 5 years," or whatever, no, heck no. But if you sort of, and it's the same with an abusive relationship, you're not going to start dating someone who's a total jerk to you. But it's the subtle build that maybe you don't see happening.
Yeah, what's the saying about the frog and the
Yes, the boiling water. Yes,
yeah.
exactly.
So, in Charlie's younger years, Bill continues to insinuate himself into Charlie's life, encouraging Charlie to continue the deviant activity, but not to get caught. He makes it clear that he has no use for someone with a criminal record, and at one point tells Charlie that Bill will be Charlie's employer. So, what part of Charlie's living situation made Charlie ripe for Bill's influence?
So I think it was one of those wrong place, wrong time kind of moments, honestly, because when I was writing, I didn't see Charlie's parents, Charlie and Tom's parents, as being, neglectful or bad parents. They were really busy. They were both had jobs and very trusting. And again, it's one of those things where you just happen to run into the wrong person instead of the right person. So to influence your child. So I just think that it was a lapse in judgment of character, and the fact that Charlie was going through a moment thinking, am I a bad person? Doing something that maybe, if corrected at the time, would have turned out differently. But when a child is in that vulnerable, am I a bad person situation, and someone is heaping praise on them, I just think that that's what made the situation toxic, so to speak.
And I may be not remembering correctly, but I feel like I remember when Charlie steals the first item, Charlie kind of gets like this exhilarating feeling, like
Yes.
almost the type of maybe a little bit overblown, like something that a kleptomaniac would get,
Right.
or and that maybe Bill kind of keyed onto that and was like, "Oh, there's something I can exploit right there." It's
Exactly.
not just a kid that's like, experimenting with trying to get away with something,
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So I think, like, as kids, we all at one point or another do something that maybe isn't quite the right thing to do, but gives us a little pump of adrenaline or excitement, and again, that could go either way. If you get caught and say report to the manager, you remember that experience as a negative one.
Mhm.
If someone comes over and is like, wow, good job,
Yeah.
you're going to remember that as a positive experience, and it's going to influence your life.
Gotcha. Well, Bill frames his mentorship in entrepreneurial terms. Quote, start small and build. So, how did you decide on that specific language of work and opportunity as a cover for exploitation? Because I mean, I gotta hand it to Bill. He's got a like an operation going.
Yeah, he also has a humongous chip on his shoulder. And I think the fact that he frames his own, like I honestly think he's also conflicted. The fact that he frames his own work, so to speak, that he does with this group of kids, he frames it as almost like this heroic protecting of the hometown, against these big chains and store chains and different people coming into the town. So I think that also helps to rope these kids in. Who doesn't want to be a superhero or, protect their town from the bad people or whatever. So it's, again, that slow build up, even for him and what he's doing, I think.
Yeah, it's like he's trying to project this Robin Hood, like,
Correct.
these are all my merry people.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. As opposed to like a Bill Sikes in Oliver Twist, who's very obviously using them for bad and doesn't care. And it's for his own gain only and has no problem broadcasting that.
Yeah. Walmart is the sheriff of Nottingham.
Exactly. Exactly.
Well, as the story progresses, we see that Bill remains very much in Charlie's mind, especially during moments of deep thought or nostalgia. Is Bill's voice in Charlie's head always a negative presence, or do you think Charlie finds some strange comfort in his influence, despite what he represents?
I think because it's the voice that Charlie has always known, or at least from a very young age, that it becomes kind of a weird source of comfort because it's the known and it's
The
something
devil,
that's exactly, it's the
Yeah.
devil. But as time goes by, I think the voice kind of almost becomes a sparring partner that Charlie goes to.
Yeah. Yeah, it's Bill is very much. I'm trying to think of any parts of the book where Bill isn't antagonistic to Charlie.
No, he's very manipulative. And I think what a child doesn't see, eventually the adult does see about that kind of manipulation.
Mhm. Well, when it comes to the voice of Bill in Charlie's head, we learn that he has threatened to reveal the contents of a file he has on Charlie, information he uses as leverage. So, did writing the voice of Bill in Charlie's head feel different than writing his dialogue in earlier scenes? How do you handle the difference between memory and manipulation?
So in this case, I think the memory becomes manipulation to a certain point. I think Bill's inside voice, the voice inside Charlie's head, is even more insidious than the voices we hear when Bill is actually having conversations with Charlie when in the younger years. So it's become such a part of who Charlie is that I don't know if Charlie's almost using it as a self manipulation at some point before realizing what's going on. But it's definitely more insidious from the inside of the head.
Yeah, would Charlie's shame, guilt, low self esteem, I imagine, because Charlie obviously is ashamed of the past, that just kind of gloms together in sort of like I don't know, gasoline that gets thrown on the fire.
Yes. And it almost it becomes such a part of Charlie that we get this imagination of what Bill would say in a certain situation. That hasn't happened because Bill's not there anymore. But it's kind of like when you imagine, oh, what would so and so think of this, or what would so and so say? But it becomes very real.
Yeah. Very psychological dynamic you've developed there. I dig it. Well, Charlie finally arrives at Tom's house, and we're given a vivid description of how the family interacts with Charlie and with each other. There's so much happening in the subtext: tense glances, withheld laughter, strategic silence. How do you approach writing scenes where the emotional volume is quiet but intense?
I guess it's the whole show don't tell mantra that everybody shouts out into the void. I mean, nobody goes into a room and every time they see that person is going to say, I hate you, you annoy me. It's, but, or
Are
maybe
you
there
sure?
are some people who do that, but generally speaking, it's very nuanced. And you don't want to tell the reader everything, because I think it's more respectful to the reader to let them pick up on the little, the body language. And it's more rewarding too. If they're like, I knew that, he didn't like her, or I knew that, she had a secret and he was hiding this, or, it's more of a reward for the reader if you don't feed it to them. So I love using the subtle body language, and maybe somebody says something, but oh wait, they winked, or they shrugged a shoulder, so that you can read into it that maybe it wasn't as it seemed.
Well, when Charlie arrives at Tom's house, one of the first things Charlie does is set up some laptops to monitor Charlie's business, installing security systems. It's an ironic moment considering Charlie lived a life of crime as a child. Charlie
Yes.
also critiques every security flaw encountered, regardless of the fact that Charlie's brother Tom lives in basically a crime-free environment. So, do you see Charlie's business as a form of redemption or just a practical skill set developed through experience? Kind of like, I think they call them ethical hackers, people that used to be hackers, got caught, so now
And then,
they
yes.
look for weaknesses that can be exploited.
Right.
For good reasons.
Right. Yes. I mean, I think maybe a little bit of both, because once you decide you're going to turn to a respectable life and leave your life of crime, you need to go somewhere. So you have a skill set that you picked up then, you can use that to get a respectable job and live, because you need to make a living. So I think that that's what Charlie did here, was to take a skill set learned as a child, maybe not for the best purposes, and to turn it towards something good and that's useful to society. And yeah, there's a little bit of repentance and, making good in there as well. So I think it's a little both.
Yeah, sublimation I don't know if sublimation's considered a tactic or what exactly. Just sublimation is taking something maladaptive and turning it into something beneficial. Like, I have a long history of addiction in my family, and, I used to drink really heavily. I haven't in like 13 years. Yeah, something like that.
Awesome.
But, that urge to change the way I feel, I kind of channel into creative things like podcasting and music production and stuff like that. So, yeah, it's very quite often the answer for a lot of life's horrific problems.
Yes. And if you think about it, there's the same amount of praise coming from the now respectful security business. Tom's always saying, oh, you're the best. You should get a job out here too. You could do security for the big firms. Yet again, there's Bill's voice saying something in the background, but it's a way of still doing the things that you know how to do in a good way and still being recognized.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you want self-esteem, do esteemable things.
Yes.
They always told me.
Yes.
Well, eventually, after getting the lay of the land and spending some time with Tom and his family, Tom and Lindsay leave for their cruise. Their son heads off to summer camp, and Charlie is left to babysit their daughter, Alex. And that, dear listener, is where the slow burn turns into a fast conflagration. So be sure to buy the book, read it, and leave a review. I'm going to ask a few questions about the book in general, not based on narrative structure that, would give away any sort of spoilers. But you mentioned it earlier. From the beginning of the book and throughout it, you referenced the idea that it takes a village to raise a child. And I feel like, was there some mention of that in your previous book?
I don't know if I mentioned it outright, but definitely there is an element of that with Sam, who forms a bond with his neighbor. and the neighbor who's trying to help another boy who's become a bit of a bully. So it's definitely a background theme.
What is your connection to that statement? What does it mean to you in your life?
Well, to me, I guess to me in my own life, it would mean have a big village because you have more of a chance of having, of outnumbering the bad influences with the good.
But get your cattle and your wife
exactly from your hometown. So yeah, big villages are definitely better. But I just think that there's so many, what is it they say? But for the grace of God, so go out. There are so many instances where we may judge other people who may have happened to run into the wrong people to influence them when they were younger. And I think this is especially true with children who are so open to influence and so malleable when they're, when you're young. That's when you're being formed as a person. So the whole "it takes a village, but be careful who the villagers are" thing really sticks in my mind. And I also remember having an argument, a downright argument, with a college friend of mine about the nature versus nurture argument. And it's a little bit of both, I think, nature and nurture. But, saying that someone who has all the best intentions and all these skills and everything has just as much of a shot as this other person in this wonderful condition, to me, it doesn't sit right. I think we're very much creatures of consequence, and you can run into the wrong people just as easily as you can run into the right people. And it's more dangerous for children when that happens.
Yeah, it makes me think actually of me and my brother. My brother, much more well-adjusted individual than I am. And I remember asking a therapist about that one time, and he was like, "Well, didn't you say your brother played sports?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "And you did not." I was like, "Hell no, I hated sports." So like, so he was around coaches, other men that kind of took on the fatherly role. I was like, oh, yeah, maybe maybe I should have done sports.
I mean, even like you're in the same home, but each child goes to a different environment at some point. They're in different grades. They run into different friends. The class is different. The teachers are different. There's so many different aspects of their life that's going to shape who they are that, I could have just as easily run into the wrong people. I was in the band at school. So we had, the band director, a great guy, and I did play sports, and there were coaches that were very helpful and supportive, but you could be with the wrong coach, someone who's demeaning, and, there's just so many different circumstances.
Yeah. Well, you talked about, I remember you said there's a motorcycle shop close to you, and Alessia went and took pictures for you. Is that where there was a Indian Roadmaster?
Yes. Okay. And that one, I think that one's like a 47 or 48. The reason I chose and I know nothing about motorcycles, just put that out there. I mean, I know more now than I did before I started writing the book, but the reason I picked the 1952 was because I think it's 1953, and anyone can correct me if I'm wrong, because again, I am not a motorcycle specialist or an Indian motorcycle specialist. But I think 1953 was the last year that they were made in the United States with all American parts, and they shut down for a while, and then they came back with other, and it was kind of like Harley versus Indian for a while, but the Indian motorcycle was 100% made in the US with US parts initially, and that ended in 1953. And so, not being sure of how many would have been made that year, I backed off to 1952 to cast a little bit of a wider net, let's say.
Yeah, and you mentioned something that I had only heard, I think, like once or twice ever before, because I did, I wasn't like a motorcycle guy, but when I was, I think from the age of 24 to 28, a motorcycle was like my only means of transportation. It was just kind of the crowd that I was hanging out with. I wasn't like a gearhead, I couldn't fix it or anything like that. But you mentioned the Indian having a suicide clutch.
Yes.
Which I've never even actually
me.
seen.
And I got to touch one. I got to go there, and then because the 47 or 48, whichever it is, also has the suicide clutch, and I got to pick the brain of the guy who was in there, the salesman in there, and honestly, that kind of grabbed my attention. That whole, how the heck did they shift like you're not sitting in a car where even if you take your hands off the wheel, everything is on four wheels and it's not going to tip or move. You're taking your hand off to shift gears. And I just found that amazing.
Well, what's the clutch? Like, what do you pull in or apply to make it to where you can shift?
To shift, I think you have to apply pressure on the one side and then you have to reach down, and there's an actual like stick shift sticking up from the motorcycle that you use to shift. Yeah, there it is.
Okay. Yeah. So
it shocked me that that's what the way they had to shift back then, and how, again, risky, exhilarating / adventurous.
I mean, like this right here, that is kind of cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's see if I can zoom in on it here. No, won't let me. Yeah. I mean, these are obviously aftermarket parts, but oh, look at that. You see that? Oh, that is dope.
And I love like most of the Indian motorcycles in that stage, they have like the leather seats and they have the dangling, I don't know what you call frill, or what do you call them? That are hanging down from the seat and also from the side saddles. They're just beautiful.
Yeah, machines. That's like a
that I haven't seen before.
A Wyatt Earp freaking flintlock.
And also the sidecars. The sidecars are phenomenal.
Oh, the sidecars?
Yes.
Yeah. I'll be your Huckleberry.
Again, sadly, I will just be a respectful observer of the motorcycles. So while writing the book, I really, really wanted to, okay, so if I become like Stephen King famous, I'm going to buy a 1952 Indian Roadmaster just to have it.
Just to have it. Have it on display in the front
exactly.
room. Yeah. You could, well, no, actually Leno drives all of his stuff.
Yes, he does.
Yeah.
He does.
Well, so actually piggybacking off of your mention of Stephen King, you've mentioned him before as a kind of seal the deal moment for your love of horror.
Yes.
Have you read his newest work, Never Flinch?
Sadly, I have not had time to read it yet. I'm kind of hoping it floats into one of my book clubs because that forces me to read it. But I actually am just wrapping up writing novel number 4. And so I've been completely focused on that, aside from I'll read the occasional ARC or book club books that I really feel obligated that I have to read. So.
I would love to read it, but one show a week, I'm reading 1 to 2 books a week. So
yeah, so you understand. Yes.
So if I want to stay married, I may.
Yeah, no, I get it. Same. I'm going to second that.
Well, you mentioned something that I don't hear talked about too much, an accountability group. Can you tell me how you use that in your writing process?
I love my accountability group. And in fact, I will be headed to them after this interview. We meet every Thursday. And I saw some kind of thing on a Facebook local group that was talking about starting this accountability group. And I kind of jumped on it. So basically, this is a group of women, and we all have different jobs. I'm the only writer in the group, but we are able to set goals and talk about our goals, and they give suggestions. One of them is really good in marketing, has given actually a couple of them given really good advice for that. But we meet once a week, and I find that if I tell somebody, or in this case, a group of people, that yes, I am going to write 1,000 words a day, if I know I'm going to see those very same people in a week, then I am much more likely not to put it off and to actually meet the goals that I said I'm going to meet. So, and they're not mean, like they don't like yell at you.
So they don't
you
publicly shame you? Nothing.
No, they're actually very supportive.
Loser.
And they talk about, okay, so you didn't meet your goal. What do you think you can do to meet it for the next time? Do you think you need to tweak your goal? Do you think you need to tweak other things? So it just helps to have voices other than the inner voice that is more likely to say, loser.
Like Bill.
Exactly. If you don't meet your goal, your inner voice is usually a lot more cruel and not geared towards, let's say, solving the reason why you didn't meet your goal. Whereas this group of women is phenomenal. So, and it really has helped me to stay on task.
So that's interesting. It's not just for writing.
No.
So are there accountability groups that are just for writing, or?
I think probably. And I've also heard of what do they call online accountability groups, but I do much better if I have to go in person because I've made this appointment. And if you have, I don't know, like a Zoom with 20 people, are they going to notice if your screen doesn't show up, in the group? Whereas these women will very much notice if I am not there.
Where's Elizabeth? So, somebody get her on the phone.
Exactly.
You're going to show up at your house.
Right. Well, we do meet right down the street. So they know where I live.
So how did you, I guess, get involved with this particular one?
I just saw this call out. There's a group and it's hilarious. And I go to them for like, hey, I need a spooky culvert. Does anybody know where a spooky culvert is in town? Like for the first book or where can I find this?
Oh, for the trailer.
Yes. Oh, okay. It's called Bad Moms of Parker. And they know everything about this whole surrounding area, not just the town of Parker. So I will ask them for many different things. And I saw someone put up a post saying, hey, I'm having trouble staying on task. Do you want to help form an accountability group? And I jumped on it.
Awesome.
And it was way out of my comfort zone initially. But now it's like, if I don't meet with them, I feel like I'm missing something.
So writers out there, if you're looking for an accountability group, look no further. Make one.
Make one. Exactly. And it doesn't have to be writers.
Yeah. I'm sure there's got to be plenty of people that want to stay on task for something.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yep. Well, I recently had Tiffany Coplin on the show, and we talked about the upcoming Books and Brews AuthorCon, where I found out you'll be participating as an author.
Yes.
So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes. And I'm representing. It's my Books and Brews t-shirt. So I think it's the second Books and Brews, but this is my first Books and Brews. So I am extremely excited. I can't really tell you too much about it because I've never been to one before. I do know that Wicked House Publishing, I think there's 5 of us.
At the Wicked House table?
Yes, at our table at Books and Brews. And there's going to be so many authors, so many events planned. So if you can make it to Indianapolis, you definitely want to go to Books and Brews because it's just, and I'm not an extrovert. I am very much an introvert who can play an extrovert at conventions. But I am super excited about this convention.
Well, I remember you having some very interesting critters in your house. Who and what are the current residents?
So briefly this morning, we had a garter snake that my son found in the backyard. We still have the blue death feigning beetles, if you remember them.
I was wondering about those.
Yes, there are 4 of them, which I think is kind of funny.
For those that don't know, those are bugs that play possum.
Yes, but they're like this really cool, like cobalt blue color too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. They're very aesthetically pleasing to the eye.
And the easiest pets in the world because you don't have to just like throw old vegetables and stuff. They don't need water. Actually, I think that would actually be bad for them because they're from the desert. Easy pet. And we have a leopard gecko, 3 cats, the dog who inspired the first novel. And I think that's it right now. For a while I think since I talked to you, this happened. Since we spoke last, we had a giant freakishly scary jumping spider that my son my son caught. And I'm trying to think if the enclosure is somewhere nearby, but
you're not talking about the toy on the string either.
No. And her name was, well, we've had a few, and some of them are cute, like the little tiny ones, and they have like orange, and I'll
take your word for it.
Those are cute, and they actually had a little wine bar in their enclosure because we went to Michael's and bought miniature furniture. But Harriet was her name, was the scary, and she would go at you if you looked and like a jumping spider, like yay big.
Oh, Jesus.
Ended up laying eggs.
Oh, Jesus.
Yes. And I said, you better get the timing on this right. I do not want a million little jumping spiders being born in my home because they can fit through the little slits for air or whatever. Oh, Mom, they stay near the mom. I don't care if they stay near the mom. So when hatching time came, they were out of my house.
Okay.
And so now I just hope they're protecting my plants in the garden.
Good God. So,
yeah.
So I mean, they're in the yard somewhere.
They're somewhere out there.
Oh,
yes.
Jesus God. So like they literally jump. I'm assuming that's why they're called jumping. Oh, how high do they jump?
I mean, I don't know because I've never put myself
stuck around
close enough to have, but they also have like very sudden movement side to side. Like they'll go back and forth side to side and they'll
crab
jump.
walk.
Yeah, they're very, very fast. And you can see videos of them too. People make like funny videos of them. And like I said, some of them, I think we had one that was bright orange, and I don't know all the different types, and I know I'll get in trouble for not remembering. But there was one that had like bright orange, and that one was named Fanta. So yes, we've had a few, but they're guests. They're not pets. They always leave.
Jumping spiders can jump up to 50 times their body length.
Oh, okay. So the smaller, the better.
That means a typical jumping spider, which is around 1 centimeter, quarter-inch long, can jump as far as 50 centimeters or 20 inches.
Yes. Good to know. Good to know.
Yeah. I'll take... Yeah.
I have my fake creatures here behind me. This is a new thing that I've recently started doing. So I was having trouble focusing for a while, the usual writer's block type thing. So I was trying to think of something I could do that wouldn't, if you pull out your phone, you get sucked into that and hours pass by and you're starting to look at other things and your mind engages. So I taught myself how to crochet, which in order to relax, which learning how to crochet is not relaxing at all. It's actually very infuriating and extremely anxiety inducing. But once you know how, so I started crocheting these little Krakens, and I can do it without thinking. And so I've been doing a Kraken a day.
Keeps the doctor away.
Yeah, exactly. And I even have this gigantic one here that I made for Alessia.
Oh.
But I find that it calms me down. It has me doing something mindless that now I can do with my eyes closed. So I can think about, okay, how do I want to direct the story? And at the end of that hour that I've been thinking, I've also made something creative. So I found that it really does help me to get back to writing once I put the Kraken, or once I finish the Kraken, it's like, okay, finish this, go back to the story. And I've also given them away with books, and they're going to be coming with me to Books and Brews. So yes, because a Kraken a day does add up.
Yeah. So making the Kraken gets you into the flow state.
Yes.
So you can finish the novel and then you can release the Kraken.
Exactly. I release the anxiety into the Kraken.
And then release the Kraken.
Exactly.
Do you yell it out loud? Release
every
the
time. Yeah, my kids are starting to get annoyed with me, but they have also scored a whole bunch of, like, I'll make one out of a certain design of yarn, and I'll, one of them will walk by and, can I have that one? Fine.
Well, kind of backtracking a little bit to your mention in Books and Brews of your table with your publisher, Wicked House. I'm a big fan of Wicked House because they have this great ability to recognize talent. Can you tell me a little bit about something I saw, the Wicked House Cult of Slightly Insane Readers.
They're awesome. So I think the readers, the Wicked House cult readers, or even Wicked House readers in general, are just so supportive. A lot of them are ARC readers. It feels odd at 50 something years old to suddenly have fans. You know, your kids are fans when they're little, and then suddenly they hate you. And but it feels wonderful and strange and amazing to have this group of people who just can't wait to read the next book.
Mm-hmm. Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what is the strangest thing you have? I laugh when I say this because the last person I asked this question to, I got a really bizarre answer. What is the strangest thing you've heard from an ARC reviewer so far?
Well, now I feel kind of left out because I haven't really had any strange or bizarre feedback. I have had a reader egg me on to write a prequel, which for the first book it worked because I did end up writing a prequel to Whisper in the Dark, and that's called The Shadow Beside Her, or that's the working title because you don't know, and that it has a home. I'm not sure when it will be coming out, but so a good came out of that. But I did get somebody read A Twist of the Lens and said, man, I would really love, something like a book about the backstory there, like delving into that backstory between Charlie and Bill. And I'm thinking, I have to finish the book I'm working on. Please don't do that to me. Yeah. Because then automatically my mind starts spinning and saying, I could do that. I could write a book about that. But yeah, so that's mostly, I haven't had any strange feedback yet. I did have somebody for a reviewer get upset with me about the steamier scenes, let's say, in A Whisper in the Dark, saying, this is not a book for children. And I'm like, well, yeah, it's not a book for children.
I agree.
Never said it was. But, so, yeah. And I was like, oh, okay, sorry.
Huh. Interesting.
Yeah.
I guess what I was thinking wasn't an ARC reviewer. It was just a regular reviewer. Yeah, something like "You're evil." I didn't.
Oh, ouch!
I don't even think got barely a 16th of the way in the book and decided he was evil. Just,
as long as it doesn't say "and I know where you live," I would be okay with that. I did get a scary spam, which was very specific too, and that the writers in the general community were extremely supportive because I was a little freaked out, but that was, neither here nor there. That was somebody looking to scam me in some way, shape, or form. So it was like a phishing, but it was oddly specific, which was what was unnerving about it. But knock on wood, that it happened twice, which was even more unnerving. But knock on wood, that seems to have passed. And again, the other authors in the society were very supportive when that happened. Oh, and I also got a reviewer, like a awesome book, loved it, 3.
Oh, 3 stars. I'm getting mixed signals here.
Yeah, okay. So, yeah.
Well, have you had any recent collaborations with your daughter, Alessia, like book trailers or other creative projects?
So at the moment, Alessia is working on the book trailer for A Twist of the Lens, and I'm hoping it gets done rather quickly because Alessia is headed to Rome. Alessia is going to be attending the Rome International Film School.
That's
for
right.
a master's. Yeah. So I need to kind of give a little nudge here before that happens.
Yeah, that she's going to be a big filmmaker and you're not going to be able to,
Well, no, if she becomes a big filmmaker, she better start making my books into films. Like, no more of this book trailer stuff. I want the full feature. So.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, we still we also collaborate, we bounce stuff off each other. I believe the last thing I bounced off of her was, what would you stab someone with in a food court? Because all of the utensils are plastic. So yeah, we collaborate all the time. And it's nice when, Alessia was a teenager once and we had kind of a stressed little relationship for a while, mother-daughter thing. But it's nice when your kids grow into an adult and you can actually speak on that level and collaborate on that level. And I am just so proud as a mom and amazed at the work that she does. So, and by the way, I have 2 other extremely talented kids coming up in the work. So I guess if Alessia won't have time, then I'm just going to have to bounce down to the next one. And Franco, by the way, my second child, makes really cool puppets too, which maybe I can start to use in my my work.
Okay. Are they? Is he on social media?
No, I don't think so at the time. Maybe Instagram, but I don't think so. I was very hesitant with even the smartphones until my kids were a lot older than every other child in the world, from what I heard, had a smartphone and mine didn't. But yes. And
well, especially with AI now.
Exactly. And obviously I get all of my creature research from my 16-year-old son, William, who wants to be a herpetologist when he grows up. So.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. All right. Well, Elizabeth, it has been a pleasure once again talking with you.
Same.
So as we bring the show to a close, is there anything you'd like to plug or reiterate?
I do have a story that just came out called Open House, and it's very creepy. It's one of the first kind of creepy horror short stories I wrote, but it found its home, and then it took a while to get published. That is in an anthology by Running Wild Press, and it's the Running Wild Press Anthology 2025 or something like that. That just came out this past week. And so if people want to see that, I haven't yet popped that up onto my website, but it will be going on there soon. I'm not that great at websites. It gets me very frustrated, but I will be putting that up there soon. The anthology, it's a realtor she's a first-time realtor. She's doing her very first open house, and she's hoping this will kind of get her away from her abusive relationship with her husband. But let's say the unseen occupants in the house have other plans for her. So that one just came out. And then I'm going to StokerCon, but that will have already happened, I think, when the interview publishes, and then Books and Brews. So go to Books and Brews.
All right. Yeah, I'm going to make it to StokerCon one of these years. But
this is my first.
Okay.
Yes, I am a StokerCon newbie.
All right. You go into isn't it like a week long?
No, it's okay. So my parents live in Rhode Island, so I'm kind of using this as an opportunity. This year it's in Stamford, Connecticut. So I will be staying with my parents and then taking the train to Stamford. StokerCon runs from the 12th of June to the 15th.
Oh, okay.
And then I'll head back to my parents and I also will be doing research on another spooky story that I am writing for an anthology with a group from Rhode Island. So it's a working trip, definitely.
All right. Sounds good. Well, listeners at home, all links are in the description. And Elizabeth, thank you again for joining me.
Thank you.
And thank you to everyone who tuned in. If you enjoyed today's episode, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Be sure to tune in next Tuesday for a new episode featuring the best and brightest authors and filmmakers of dark literature and film. So until then, stay healthy, stay sane, and as always, thank you for listening. See you next time.